Ferenczem withstood a brutal siege by Shapur II for 2 years, before the citadel finally fell.
Whoa! 2 freaking years! Kingdom of Armenia reacted
For
to these
centuries,
suggestions
the Caucasus have been known as the crossroads of Europe and
I gotta
Asia.
do because I don't want to
Situated between the steppes of Russia, the mountains of Anatolia, the forests of the Levant, and the expanses of Iran.
Here's the thing, right? You know, if you're like a dedicated viewer of mine, constantly commenting, constantly liking, you know, your suggestions will have a little bit more priority than the average person, because you might not be a channel member, but you are still helping me, right? If that makes sense. So, but still, if you're a channel member, you're of the utmost priority. So, but still,
Caucasian history
and the
has
guy
always
who
been
wanted
a
it
brilliant
is a
drama
very
featuring interplay between
dedicated viewer of
countless
mine,
cultures and religions. Among the most important historical polities in this region was the Kingdom of Armenia, which existed between 321 BCE and 428 CE, and was a keystone in the eternal struggle between the great civilizations of Rome and Persia. What was the Kingdom of Armenia? Who were its inhabitants? And what did its culture look like? Welcome to our video on the Kingdom of Armenia, an ancient realm at the crossroads of the East and the West. When people of the future look back on our societies, there's one cultural quirk they'll know.
I'm looking forward to this.
This presents a historiographical context. Before going into the origins of the Armenian kingdom itself, we must first understand the broader geographical context of the ancient Caucasus in the centuries before Christ. This presents a historiographical challenge, as most of our sources on this region during antiquity come from Greco-Roman authors. And while native Armenian writing does exist, most of it dates centuries later, after the nation's Christianization. As such, we have many gaps in our record. With all that said, typical. Let us cover...
You know something, right? And this is so sad, is... we don't know history. Like, most history, we don't know at all. Like, it's just blank, mostly blank. 90% of history is blank to us now. It's all lost. It's all gone. I don't know. I hope when God comes back, he shows us everything. That is the one thing that I would want, at least when I die. It's like, I just hope that in the afterlife somehow that I'm able to see the history of everything, how everything truly began, you know, slowly starting to develop the way how it did, languages, these kingdoms, all of this stuff that's literally lost to time, unfortunately. Because humans have been around for tens of thousands of years, and most of that history is just gone. So, you know, it's like, you just... I mean, yeah, we have some stuff left over, but a lot of it is just like, we truly won't know it as it is. It's just sad. It's just really, really sad, because you will die not knowing all this information that is just a mystery, really and truly. And this is another thing going into the Bible, actually. If you read the Bible, and I was talking with a few people about this, I'm like, this is why a lot of people don't seem to understand the Bible, is because a lot of the stuff in the Bible is gone. It disappears. It's left in the dust of time. But I'm like, if we actually had proper details and records left over, I am certain that what the Bible talks about would actually make more sense. It actually sound more believable, right? But anyways, let's...
what we know, beginning with geographical terminology. Greater and Lesser Armenia are old names for the regions where Armenian speakers resided in antiquity, based on whether they were on the southeast or northwest of the Euphrates River. These lands were not just populated by Armenians, but also Aramaic, Iranian, Galatian, Semitic, and Hellenic ethnic groups, depending on the period one is discussing. By that token, the region played host to a wide variety of faiths, as Semitic, Hellenic, and Iranian religions all coexisted within the same sphere.
Didn't Jesus speak Aramaic, right? I think that was a language that Jesus spoke, Aramaic, if I'm not mistaken.
In fact, Greco-Roman writings imply that Armenian polytheism, with deities like Aramazd, Anahit, and Vahagan, were heavily influenced by deistic figures from Persian religions, such as Ahura Mazda, Anahita, and Verith Ragna. Throughout all of history, the regions of Greater and Lesser Armenia have come under the rule of countless kingdoms and empires. However, as previously stated, the Armenian kingdom we will be exploring today will be the one that existed between early and late antiquity. Throughout its history, this kingdom was ruled by three main dynasties: the Orontids, Artaxiads, and Arsacids. The first dynasty, the Orontids, ruled when Armenia was a satrapy of the Achaemenid Persians. This is an important fact, as it established the religious and diplomatic connections between Persia and Armenia, which we will see down the line. Indeed, the history of the Kingdom of Armenia begins with the Armenian peoples as vassals of the great Persian King of Kings. By the 4th century BC, the ruling satraps of Armenia, the Orontid dynasty, had been in power for centuries, forging cultural, diplomatic, and tributary links with their Achaemenid overlords. However, this status quo was shaken up when a certain Alexander wiped the Persian Empire off the face of the earth.
So, I thought he was going to start off with how Armenians got in the Caucasus region in the first place, because this is just a political state of Armenia, right? But I guess not. I mean, still though, and I'm bringing this up because there's something I'm going to be talking about. But like I said in my previous video yesterday, I kind of just let the video play first now, because a lot of people have been asking me, hey, just let the video play for a bit, then speak. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try that out. But I'm just going to let it play before I say anything.
Upon absorbing Armenia into his Macedonian Empire, Alexander appointed Miran, a garrison commander at Sardis and scion of the Orontid dynasty, to rulership of the satrapy.
So Armenia was an entity. It wasn't a country yet. Okay, so it was just an entity within... Okay. Within the Achaemenid Empire. And now Macedonian Empire. Okay, I thought Armenia... Okay. I thought Armenia was originally like
disappointment.
Independent. Okay.
But after Alexander died, his generals began fighting amongst themselves for pieces of his erstwhile empire. And Armenia came under the control of the general Seleucus and his emergent Seleucid Empire. Seleucus I set up a man from the Orontid dynasty.
So this is how the Seleucid Empire was... Okay.
Called Mithranes, to rule Armenia as a satrap. And thus, the Orontids stayed under Seleucid influence for the next century. During this time, some rulers, such as Orontes III, tried to assert their independence, resulting in the rise of two Armenian states, Greater and Lesser Armenia. However, the Seleucids eventually struck back, and by the reign of Orontes IV in 200 BCE, retook the kingdom. Nevertheless, in the ensuing decade, the Armenians were able to reassert independence by playing the great empires of Europe and Asia off one another, something which would become a running theme throughout their history. In 190 BCE...
Wait, is that why? Is that why I keep seeing Armenia in like all those reactions that I did that showed like the Kingdom of Armenia like always on like a different side in a war?
The Roman Empire defeated the Seleucids at the Battle of Magnesia. In the aftermath, a satrap called Artaxias, from whom the Artaxiad dynasty is named after, rebelled against his Macedonian overlords. Alongside another satrap called Sarietres, who presided over a smaller Armenian state called Sopheni, they overthrew the Seleucids and became kings of their respective kingdoms. To establish the legitimacy of their rule, both kings claimed connection to the previous Orontid dynasty. Despite now being an independent polity, the culture of the Kingdom of Armenia was still largely defined by that of its former imperial overlords. The most influential of these were the Persians, whose customs and rituals loomed large in Armenian society, even when the Romans were dominant in the region. Many Armenian kings had Persian-sounding names and had Persian customs of marriage, such as polygyny. The famous Armenian king...
Polygyny. Wait, no. I'm thinking about the Roman word. Not Roman, but Latin word, like poly. Which is like a root word for like multiple or something. Is this the same? No, but polygyny. Is it the same as poly? Like polygamy, right? I don't know. I just saw the word poly, which just means multiple. So polygyny, is it like what? You're married to like multiple people, multiple spouse, right? Basically polygamy or however the hell you say. You know the word I'm saying. Or poly relationship, basically. It's just a different accent. Polygyny. Is it? Someone, if you know the answer to that, say in the comments.
King Tigranes the Younger, for instance, was married to a daughter of the Parthian King of Kings, and even claimed that title for himself. Iranian, and particularly Zoroastrian culture, was paramount in Armenia during this period.
Oh wow.
For instance, some coins have Achaemenid fire motifs, while local deities appear with aesthetic representations of Iranian deities and Amesha-Spentus, such as Verithragna and Mithra. Even after the kingdom embraced Christianity in the 3rd century CE, this Persianate imagery endured in Christian art, for example influencing scenes of the Nativity. A lot of this Persian continuity can be found in the strong temple aristocracy present in Armenia in this period, as the kingdom was home to a hereditary class of priests that held considerable power. The Armenian pre-Christian religion was eclectic in borrowing from its neighbors, but maintained a solid structure despite political upheavals. Deities like Aramazd, the head god, Tyr, who was the god of light, Sovinar, the rain goddess, and Anahit, goddess of beauty, were prominent in the empire, with large decorated temples dedicated to them. There is some debate in academic communities as to whether Armenian religion was separate from Persian Zoroastrianism, or if it was a Zoroastrian-derived religion. What we can say with certainty is that the gods of the Armenians had Persian as well as Semitic and Hellenic analogues. For example, Nane, a daughter of chief god Aramazd and mother goddess, was linked to Nanaya, a Babylonian fertility goddess. However, Greek art was also present in depictions of deities like Anahit and Tyr, who were depicted like Aphrodite and Apollo respectively in temple statues. Artaxias I himself built temples to Apollo Tyr and Artemis Anahit in his capital of Artaxata, highlighting the diverse influence of the Greek and Iranian religious institutions that were mirrored in Armenia in an effort to create a cohesive kingdom. Although the Armenian kingdom later adopted the Christian faith, anecdotally being the first kingdom to do so in an official and state capacity, many of the unique features of Armenian Christianity may have connections to the country's pagan past. For example, the Christian festival of Vadava, now done for the Feast of Transfiguration, was once done in honor of the goddess Astrik, connected to the Greek Aphrodite. No discussion of the...
Oh! That's interesting. So it's kind of like how Christmas is a pagan thing, but just adopted by Christianity, pretty much. I didn't know that Armenia. That's actually kind of cool. I thought like Christmas is like the only like holiday, festival, whatever the hell you want to call it, or tradition that Christian societies adopted from pagan roots.
Axiad dynasty would be complete without discussing its most famous sovereign, Tigranes II, or Tigranes the Great. Similar to a certain Macedonian named Philip, Tigranes was the son of the royal dynasty but grew up as a hostage in the Parthian court. Educated in the Persian ways of warfare and etiquette, he was appointed king of Armenia by Mithridates II of Parthia. Tigranes reformed the Armenian army with a heavy emphasis on archers and horse soldiers, and proceeded to become a great military general, He involved himself carefully in the wars of the empires around him, such as when he indirectly supported another Mithridates, Mithridates VI of Pontus, the poison-drinking guy, during his kingdom's wars with Rome.
Poison-drinking guy? Wait, what does he mean by poison-drinking guy? What?
Managed to overtake the kingdom of Sophene before waging wars against the Parthians and Seleucids. Both empires were under geopolitical strain at the time, and thus the shrewd Tigranes managed to enlarge his empire to reach the waters of the Mediterranean and as far south as Judea. Many Greco-Roman sources call him the Great, and admit that his achievements were incredibly impressive. His legendary capital of Tigranokerta was a cosmopolitan metropolis, with both Greek and Iranian architecture abounding.
Wow!
Tigranes himself took the title of Philhellene, or Friend of the Greeks. However, while Tigranes grew powerful at the expense of the empires of the East, in the West, the eagle standard of Italia was growing ever stronger. Eventually, Pompey the Great intruded upon Armenia, largely due to the aid it had provided to Rome's enemy, the aforementioned Pontic Kingdom of Mithridates. A long and protracted war took place in Armenia, with major losses for both sides. Having the advantage, the Armenians exhausted the Romans, causing mutinies amongst the legions. It was up to Pompey the Great to control Armenian power, as well as a rebellious son of Tigranes called Tigranes the Younger. Tigranes' son had the support of the Parthians, however they could not invest in a long-term siege of the country. Pompey's invasion was incredibly powerful, and eventually Tigranes, by now an old man of 75, relented. He became an ally of Rome, and his realm, although still nominally independent, became a client state of the empire. Tigranes died in 55 BCE. Armenia eventually came under full Roman control under Tiberius, who sent Germanicus, of Bring Me Back My Legions fame, to Armenia to solidify Roman control and to help with the ascension of one Zeno Artaxias to the throne. The Principate had a vested interest in Armenia.
So it was Rome that ruined Armenia. Okay.
Due to its strategic
I was
location
wondering how that
and previous
happened.
involvement in Roman affairs. Anecdotally, centuries earlier during the Punic Wars, Hannibal is said to have stayed in Armenia as an exile after his defeat at Rome's hand. To control the lucrative trade routes between Europe and Asia, which ran through Armenia, the Romans ensured that they had legions stationed in the country and sponsored the development of roads to enhance commerce in the kingdom. This was typical of Roman imperial strategy in the Near East. Rome, however, would not be the only empire that vied for influence over Armenia in the 1st century AD. Their arch-rivals, the Parthians, also maintained a presence in the area, and eventually the Arsacid dynasty of Parthian origin came to power, with the first ruler being a Zoroastrian magus called Tiridates I. Over the next few centuries, Armenia would swing like a pendulum, back and forth between Roman and Parthian influence.
Swing like a pendulum.
The rise of the Neo-Persian Sasanian Empire and the spread of Christianity in the Roman Empire, Armenia began to see changes that would define the region and the people for millennia to come. As previously discussed, the Armenian religious apparatus was strongly influenced by Iranian ideals and religion, and the rise of the Sasanians strengthened this influence in the short term. Many Armenian kings had clung to Roman patronage as a means to combat the rising Sasanian influence in their realm. This was evidently in vain, as the Sasanian Shahanshah Shapur I at one point managed to install Hormazd, his own son, onto the Armenian throne. While this was happening, a small religion from Judea called Christianity was on the rise. Initially, the nobles of Armenia were hostile to
Small religion from Judea. What a way to describe that. Also, I noticed something here. He has the Germans call the Germanics. No, that's wrong. Germanics? That's not an English word. That's not an English word. It's German. Germanic people. No, not Germanics. No, that's so wrong. Like I get it, right? People, you don't want to confuse the modern political nationality of German with, you know, actual German people, but like, no, this is German. Although granted, Germans are kind of, well, sort of, mostly southern. All Germanic people are originated from like southern Sweden, what's now modern day Denmark, before expanding. So all Germanic people are Scandinavian, but still, these people across the Rhine region were called Germans. Not German. I'm sorry. Like, I had to point that out. That's so no, because then people are gonna see this and then they're gonna start using this wrong. And no, like, people need to call this out. Was I gonna say something else? I don't think so.
And persecuted it much like Roman emperors like Diocletian did. However, in 301 CE, due to the efforts of Saint Gregory the Illuminator, King Tiridates III converted to Christianity. Gregory also helped craft the Armenian alphabet that is still used to this day, basing it on the Greek alphabet. This marked the beginning of a great tradition of Armenian scholarship. Meanwhile, the temple...
I swear, so many alphabets are based on the Greek alphabet.
Aristocrats of the old Zoroastrian and polytheistic Armenian faiths were co-opted into the new Christian arrangement, with many of their social privileges retained. Much as it did when it was polytheistic, Christian Armenia absorbed many religious influences from neighboring regions, particularly from the Christian rites practiced in Syria. In contrast, Greek Christianity, centered in the increasingly important Eastern Roman capital of Constantinople, was always held relatively distant from Armenian affairs. During important ecumenical conclaves in the Roman Empire, such as the 251 AD Council of Chalcedon, Armenian bishops were not present or active in the discussion. As such, Armenian Christianity ended up with significant theological divergences with the Nicene Christianity of Rome, especially in regards to the nature of Christ. Moreover, Zoroastrian influence still remained in the region. By the time the Armenian kingdom adopted Christianity, it had already entered into the twilight years of its existence. In the 4th century AD, the Sasanians constantly raided the kingdom, and by the 4th century, the last ruler of an independent Armenia was a queen named Ferentzem. After her husband, the king, Arsakis II, was taken hostage by the Sasanians, the Persian Empire proceeded to launch a massive invasion of the Kingdom of Armenia. Retreating with the Armenian treasury and many soldiers and civilians into the fortress of Artugesa, Ferentzem withstood a brutal siege by Shapur II for 2 years, before the citadel finally fell.
Whoa! 2 freaking years! 2 years!
And with it, her kingdom. After the victory of the Sasanians, Ferentzem was taken prisoner and tortured to death. In 387...
Why? Why torture? Why torture? Like, you got the kingdom already. What's the point in torturing them? For what? That's so absurd.
CE, Armenia was partitioned between Eastern Rome and Sasanian Persia, and the last local nobles in Persia were disposed of in 428 CE. While the Kingdom of Armenia may appear secondary to many of the major powers of the time, we can see that it often was a powerful broker or an independent force in antique geopolitics. Later Armenian historiography would harken back to this period as a golden age of independence and strength. Its original pantheon of unique polytheistic faiths and its eventual conversion to a unique form of Christianity allowed for this independence to continue. Christianity itself in Armenia was the catalyst of an ethnogenesis, bringing a form of continuity and community in the people of the kingdom even after its end.
You know, it's funny, right? Because I looked at the territory of Armenia back then at its peak, and, you know, I would say, personally speaking, that modern day Armenia, which is so small, has more of a claim to the regions around it, like Turkey, Azerbaijan, that type of stuff, because Turks are indigenous to Anatolia. So, and even if you want to argue that Armenians were around way longer before Turks came. But interestingly enough, I noticed that the region also overlapped over the Kurdish regions that the Kurds also claim to be theirs, and the Kurds would love to have as an independent Kurdistan. So that got me thinking, like, who has more claimant to those areas? Like Armenians, Kurds, like I wouldn't really say Turkey. Like no. Like Turkish people came so late to Anatolia. It's that's so out of the debate. Honestly speaking, but I'm not talking all of Anatolia. I'm talking like all the lands that Armenia had at its peak. Like, would modern day Armenia, like, I think modern day Armenia would have way more of a better claim. In fact, actually, I think that is why after the Ottomans capitulated in World War One, actually Armenia was originally so thick, because the Western Allies was trying to somewhat restore the old borders of Armenia, actually, which makes sense in my personal opinion. But like I say, it kind of overlaps with the Kurds. So, and the Kurds, that would be interesting. Imagine a scenario comes where, I don't know, somehow Kurdistan becomes an independent country, and then Armenia goes to war with Kurdistan to restore its old territorial borders, somewhat, some of it. But what do you think? What do you think? You think that Armenia has a legitimate claim to essentially what is kind of southeastern Turkey? I think so. I very much think so. Like, they are more or less driven out of their
Most
lands.
important of all, the kingdom often showed a syncretism that followed the patterns of the time, combining Semitic, Greek, Iranian, and local Caucasian influences to form a dynamic cultural milieu. While many other kingdoms and even empires would be run by Armenian dynasties, it was the Armenian Kingdom of Antiquity which defined the history of the region. In a crossroads such as the Caucasus, Greater and Lesser Armenia demonstrate the contradiction of existence between empires, a society both syncretistic and balancing between stronger foes. More videos on the history of...
Wow, excellent video. Love that video. Actually gave me a lot more details about Armenia that I did not know. Really love learning about that. I got a bit of a soft spot for Armenia because, it's just like nobody really talks about it. Right, and plus Armenia is a very ancient place, very, very ancient in this region. So I always kind of had a soft spot for Armenia, really and truly, right? So yeah, I really did enjoy this, man. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Guys, if you're a dedicated viewer of mine, I have so many people who are suggesting me do this, react to this, react to that, react to next, react to blah. I highly recommend you go check out my channel membership. If you become a member, only 99 cents a month, I will be able to react to your stuff much more faster. I'll give you much more priority. Like, highly recommend it. Okay, like I'm telling you, I'm probably gonna link the membership thing in the description for you to just click on, so you can watch the video where I go into much more details of the perks that you get when you become a channel member. But I'm telling you guys, all my members that were members, that are still members, okay, they did not regret it, okay, except for one guy, which I think he unsubbed from me. But I don't know, he was kind of like being rude to me, and I kind of just looked at him and I was like, bro, why are you being so rude? Like, if you're gonna be rude like that, yeah, get off my channel, right? But for the most part, 99% don't regret it. Okay, go check out my other videos on my channel, man. Make sure to like and subscribe, turn the bell button on. Again, if you have any suggestions, comment down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.